In the sun-baked heart of the Serengeti, where life and death constantly walk side by side, a strange and unprecedented event unfolded, one that would leave wildlife researchers, photographers, and even seasoned rangers questioning everything they thought they knew about predator behavior. It began on a quiet morning when the golden grass swayed gently beneath a pale orange sky, and a small clan of hyenas scattered in panic after a fierce clash with a rival group. Amid the chaos, two tiny hyena cubs, barely old enough to open their eyes fully, their fur still soft and spotted, were left helpless between the bodies of their fallen clan members. Their mother, mortally wounded during a violent territorial dispute, lay motionless near the base of an acacia tree. The cubs' faint cries blended with the rustling grass, their survival chances dropping with every passing moment. In the wild, a hyena cub without its clan typically had no future. They were destined to become prey before noon. Several meters away, a lioness named Marilla patrolled the area. She belonged to a pride known for its strength, but that day she walked alone, separated from her sisters after a nighttime hunt gone wrong. Marilla herself had recently lost her own newborn cubs to a male takeover, an event that had plunged her into a state of grief so deep that even the other lionesses avoided disturbing her. When she first heard the faint yelping of the orphan hyena cubs, her instincts kicked in. At first, her reaction was classic lioness behavior. She crouched low, preparing to strike. Hyenas were natural enemies, competitors for territory and food. Yet something in the weak, trembling cries of the cubs made her pause. Instead of pouncing, she approached cautiously, sniffing the air with a mixture of suspicion and sadness that reflected her recent loss. The cubs, too young to understand danger, crawled toward the warmth and shadow of her massive body, nudging her with blind trust. What happened next defied every natural law of the savannah. Marilla did not kill them. She did not abandon them. She leaned down, gently scooped the first cub by the scruff of its neck, and walked toward a shaded patch under a cluster of acacia trees. Then she returned to fetch the second cub. Researchers, observing from a distance through binoculars, froze in disbelief. A lioness adopting hyena cubs, creatures she was supposed to hate, was unheard of. Even the most compassionate mother lions had never been recorded taking in the young of their fiercest competitors. Some believed Marilla's maternal instincts, still raw after her own loss, had overwhelmed her biological programming. Others suspected the cubs. Helplessness triggered a primitive drive to nurture, overriding the ancient rivalry etched into the DNA of both species. Over the next several hours, Marilla lay beside the cubs, her tail flicking gently around them as they whimpered and snuggled close to her chest. When a pair of vultures tried to approach, she snarled aggressively, sending them scattering. When a jackal circled too closely, she chased it off with ferocity unmatched. She groomed the cubs with her rough tongue until they smelled faintly like her own kind, further confusing the watching researchers. Days passed, and Marilla hunted small prey and brought it back for the cubs, tearing it into small, manageable bites for them to eat. She allowed them to sleep between her giant paws, nudged them when they tried to wander too far, and even growled protectively when other lions from her pride wandered near. To them, the scent of hyena cubs meant enemies, not family. But Marilla's stance was clear. She had adopted them, and any threat to them would face her claws. Wildlife experts began documenting her behavior daily, noting every detail, hoping to understand why nature had taken such an unexpected turn. Some speculated that the cubs reminded her of the young she'd lost, filling a void she couldn't express in any other way. Others believed that Marilla was an exceptionally rare case, a lioness whose grief had reshaped her instincts. Whatever the truth, the savannah had become the stage for an extraordinary narrative, a lioness raising two hyena cubs as her own, defying millions of years of evolutionary conflict. But the serenity of this fragile, unnatural family was destined to be tested in ways no one could have predicted. As the days stretched into a week, the bond between Marilla and the orphan hyena cubs grew stronger and stranger. The cubs, who should have grown up mimicking the whoops and giggles of their own species, instead began adopting lion-like behaviors. They followed Marilla closely, copying her posture, pouncing clumsily on insects the way young lion cubs did, and even attempting tiny, high-pitched roars that startled nearby birds. For a brief moment in the vast timeline of the Serengeti, species boundaries seemed irrelevant. The savanna had never seen such a sight. Two hyena cubs toddling after a protective lioness, as though they were born into her pride. But the peace was short-lived. One afternoon, the lion pride approached, 6 lionesses and 2 dominant males, with the unmistakable confidence of creatures who owned the land they walked on. They were drawn by Marilla's scent, one they recognized, and by the strange foreign smell accompanying it. When they saw the cubs, confusion quickly turned into aggression. Hyenas had long been rivals, notorious scavengers and fierce competitors. The pride's males, in particular, saw them as intruders, and intruders meant danger. The lead male lion, a scar-faced brute named Rengo, let out a booming roar as he approached, paws thundering across the dry grass. Marilla immediately stepped in front of the cubs, her tail stiff and her ears pinned back. It was the first time she had challenged her own pride. The lionesses watched in disbelief. Defending hyena cubs was unnatural, borderline madness in their eyes. Rengo snarled, demanding Marilla step aside, but she didn't budge. Instead, she lowered her head, bared her teeth in a defiant warning. The cubs squeaked and pressed themselves against her legs, trembling. The situation escalated quickly. Rengo lunged, not at Marilla, but at the nearest cub. In a burst of desperate strength, Marilla swiped him across the face, leaving 3 deep claw marks that stunned everyone watching. The pride had never seen her like this. A tense standoff followed, Marilla circling protectively. The cubs huddled beneath her, and the rest of the pride unsure whether to attack or retreat. Then something unexpected happened. A group of spotted hyenas appeared on the horizon, likely members of a nearby clan drawn by the scent of their kind. They watched the confrontation from a distance, their posture uncertain. Hyenas and lions rarely cooperated. In most cases, their encounters turned into bloody battles. But these hyenas hesitated, sensing something different. The lioness was not killing the cubs. She was defending them from her own. This moment of bewildering cross-species tension held the savanna in a breathless suspense. Suddenly, a second roar echoed, this time from one of the lionesses in pride, an elder named Suri. Suri stepped between Rengo and Marilla, not to help the hyena cubs, but to stop the pride from turning on Marilla altogether. Suri had seen lionesses driven out, or killed, for lesser acts of rebellion. She knew Marilla was grieving, fragile, and not herself. Her intervention bought precious seconds of calm. The standstill stretched, and eventually Rengo, still bleeding from Marilla's strike, backed away with an irritated rumble. The pride retreated slowly, though their eyes stayed locked on the unlikely trio. Marilla didn't wait. She quickly nudged the cubs forward and led them deeper into the tall grass, toward an area of the plains less frequented by lions. She knew the pride would return eventually. They always did, and that meant the cubs' lives were still in danger. The hyena group watching from the distance finally moved closer, cautiously at first. When they reached Marilla, something extraordinary happened. Instead of attacking her or trying to reclaim the cubs through force, the hyenas approached with submission, ears flattened, tails low, heads bowed. They seemed to understand that the lioness had saved 2 members of their clan. A truce formed, fragile and temporary, but real. In that surreal moment, Marilla nudged the cubs toward the hyena group. The cubs hesitated, torn between the scent of their adoptive mother and the instinctual familiarity of their own species. One cub whimpered, trying to climb back onto Marilla's paw, but she gently pushed it away. Her eyes, usually fierce and golden, softened with a grief that mirrored the day she first found them. She knew she could not keep them. The pride would never allow it. By returning them to their own kind, under protection of a confused but respectful hyena clan, she was giving them their best chance at life. Before walking away, Marilla lowered her head and touched noses with each cub, a gesture rarely seen between lions and their own young, let alone another species. The hyenas formed a protective circle around the cubs, and slowly, Marilla turned back toward her pride's territory. She didn't look back, though the cubs cried after her until their voices faded. Rangers watching the scene were stunned. A lioness had not only adopted and protected hyena cubs, she had negotiated, in her own instinctive way, a peaceful transfer between natural enemies. Days later, researchers confirmed that the cubs had survived and were being raised by the hyena clan, who accepted them without aggression. Mariela returned to her pride bruised but alive, though forever changed. And for the rest of that season, no lions or hyenas fought in that part of the Serengeti. It was as though Mariela's impossible act of compassion had momentarily rewritten the rules of nature. The event became one of the most astonishing wildlife stories ever recorded, a powerful reminder that even in the harshest environments, empathy can appear where least expected, shocking everyone who witnesses it.